Hey everybody, welcome to Pastor, Have You Seen This? We have an acronym for this. We say PHYST or FIST. If you remember your fourth grade phonetics class. Do you remember that, Michael? Phonetics? So PH makes a F sound. Y can sometimes make a I sound, and so that's where you get fist from. Oh, you get it. Okay, so at Pastor, Have You Seen This? We just take some of this internet content you send us, and we give you a pastor's take on it. That's what this is all about, so that you get sort of a Christian worldview insight into something that maybe relates to other world religions or something that's going on in the culture or some political hot button issue or whatever. So we hope you find this helpful. Hopefully this helps Christianity make some sense. You might totally disagree with my take. I haven't, just some mercy, because I haven't seen this, so I don't have all my research in front of me, but I'm just going to go from my basic understanding of stuff. And hey, throw something in the comments, and we'll get a conversation going if you totally disagree with what I'm saying. Okay? So without further ado, let's see what this particular viewer wanted me to comment on.
Did you know that Jesus did not die of crucifixion?
Wait, I have a prediction. He did not die of crucifixion. Is this person a Muslim?
Blasphemy. But that's right, he didn't. Of execution in which it took days for the victim to die. The victim would be left hanging, struggling to breathe until their muscles became exhausted and they wouldn't be able to pull themselves up.
This is all true. This is kind of how people died of crucifixion. They did not die of the nails in their arms or whatever, or feet. They died of asphyxiation, yes?
Which would lead to their death by suffocation or by exhaustion. But Jesus died after hanging on the cross for 6 hours.
Just 6 hours. Normally it would take days. What is going on? Good question.
Not for days. And after 6 hours of hanging on the cross, he gave up his spirit and died. A Roman soldier standing there was surprised that Jesus died in just 6 hours.
Yes.
And he went to check if it was really true.
Yes.
He took a spear and pierced Jesus on the side.
Yes.
And out came blood and water.
Yes.
Now this water is most probably what we know today as pericardial
Oh,
fluid.
yes.
And this flow of blood and fluid would have happened only in the case of a cardiac rupture.
Yes.
Which tells us that Jesus died of a cardiac rupture. He did not die of crucifixion. Jesus literally died of a broken heart because of your sin and mine. The weight of the punishment of...
See, I made the assumption that he was going to be a Muslim person denying the crucifixion of Jesus, one of the most well-attested facts of ancient history, and the most well-attested fact recorded in the New Testament outside the New Testament. That is not his perspective. He is clearly a believer.
Of our sin was too much for him to bear. He took it all, said, "It is finished," and it broke his heart. And he died for you and for me.
Well, that's fascinating. And then there's Candace Owens, so we're watching her react, I guess. But yeah, that is a beautiful way of putting it. I think it's very poetic. I think that, so he had already died. I mean, obviously, it's poetic to say he died of a broken heart. The stresses of Jesus' crucifixion were not normal. So it's important, I guess, to say he doesn't go in to explain why only 6 hours instead of days. And I think he's implying that perhaps the spiritual weight of sin was its own stress on his physical body that pushed his death quicker. I don't disagree with that necessarily. But I think it's important for us to realize that Jesus also had the existing torture, which included a lot of bloodletting. So he was given the lash. And so 40 lashes minus 1. And it would have been with a cat of nine tails. Just so you understand what a cat of nine tails is, it's a whip with leather thongs on the end, or leather strings on the end. And then at the end of the leather strings, 9 strings as it turns out, there would be tied a piece of bone or metal. Sharp piece of bone or metal. So you can just imagine not just being whipped, but being whipped with something that as it strikes you, and you get not just the sting and pain and incisions of the whip, but then you get the further incisions of the bone or the metal that then, once embedded in the skin and then is drug away by force, would create unbelievable lacerations and loss of blood. So by the time Jesus, and also add to this that he was forced to carry his own cross, he was so devastatingly exhausted and near death that he couldn't actually finish that task. So Simon of Cyrene had to be asked to forced to step in to carry Jesus' cross the rest of the way up to Golgotha, where he was executed. So there are all sorts of good reasons within the text itself to understand why Jesus died sooner than most crucifixion victims would have died. Additionally, by the way, the other people who were crucified with him were still alive, and like would be typical, but they needed to get them down off the cross because the Jews were celebrating not just Sabbath, but a special Sabbath, because Passover that year landed on Sabbath, and Sabbath was the next day, so they needed to get the bodies off. So the Roman soldier was going to come and break their legs, but Jesus' legs did not need to be broken because he was already dead. So you get that additional detail in John about the fact that his heart had to be pierced by the sword, leading to the effusion of blood and water. So I think it's poetic to say that therefore Jesus died of a broken heart. Certainly he died bearing the weight of sin. And I think that also explains why when Jesus goes to his crucifixion, he seems actually more troubled by the trauma of his crucifixion than by many later Christians who would die in his name. So people would die in his name being burned at the stake, which I don't know is less physically torturous than a crucifixion, although crucifixion is probably right at the top of the kind of means of killing someone. It was intended that way by the Romans, to be the most degrading, the most awful and physically torturous way to kill a person. But there are others: being burned at the stake, being torn apart by wild animals while alive. That's got to be rank right up there. And there are reports, reliable reports, of Christians who endured their crucifixion, their execution, not so crucifixion, their executions with, let's just say, more aplomb, more radiant joy, some of them singing, than Jesus, who's tortured. I mean, not just at the moment of crucifixion, where he's crying out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" but also all the way from the garden where he's sweating drops of blood. So what's going on there? Well, he's bearing the weight of sin. And so to this person's point, I think we can maybe point to the idea that Jesus, what constitutes the torture of the cross for Jesus is not merely that he's being physically torn apart by one of the world's most excruciating forms of execution, but he is being spiritually torn apart. As the Bible says, God made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, so that we might become the righteousness of God. What is it like to become sin, especially as the sinless Son of God? Well, we don't know. We can't know, but I think what we can know is just that it would be a unique form of torture. So, thus the broken heart comment. So I think it's a beautiful way to put it, that Jesus died for us, certainly, and it brings to mind Romans chapter 5, verse 8, that while we are still sinners, Christ died for us, the righteous for the unrighteous. So the crucifixion and our times of communion are this regular reminder of what God went through to pay our debt so that we could be free and full of hope. So, well said, sir. Sorry for misidentifying you as a Muslim man. You clearly are not. I'm going to get roasted in the comments for this. All right, I look forward to it. Go ahead and comment on this, and we'll see you all next time on Pastor, Have You Seen This?